So good evening, everyone. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I just had an unmute and then a second unmute. Okay, we're good? Great. This is a wonderful gathering and a culmination of that just really unprecedented involvement in the development of this vision and roadmap. That's been quite exciting. And I am especially excited and privileged to have been asked to take us into the next step in our agenda to talk about how we're going to move this vision and roadmap in the upcoming legislative agenda. And to particularly do that with an amazing champion for women and families. So Assemblymember Solages is a lifelong resident of Elmont, New York on Long Island, was first elected to the New York State Legislature in November of 2012, and was at that time the first Haitian American to serve in the Assembly. Last month, she was elected to her fourth term. She's a tireless champion for women, children, and families, for racial justice, early childhood education, and the rights and welfare of new Americans who have immigrated here seeking safety, opportunity, and reunion with family. The Assembly member serves as the chair for the Task Force on New Americans and was recently appointed as chair of the New York State Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus. She's an advocate as well for her district and community, helping to secure grants and attention to local libraries, school districts, small businesses, while fighting for a higher minimum wage and better public transportation for Long Island. She's a mom with two young sons and is a graduate of Hofstra University and the Robert J. Thompson Eastern Leadership Academy. In my role as a statewide campaigns manager at Citizen Action, I've had the pleasure of working with the Assemblywoman and her staff on issues such as the New York's groundbreaking paid family leave insurance program, and of watching her in action on the floor of the legislature, reminding her colleagues of the everyday challenges faced by working mothers. She was an early sponsor of New York's Fair Pay Act, and I think there are a few of us who don't know and don't remember when she made history breastfeeding her infant child on the floor of the State Assembly during the opening day of the 2019 session. She sponsored legislation for affordable housing, protection against coercion of immigrant workers, and closest to my heart, she's spoken at every one of the statewide Child Care Advocacy Day rallies, and in the past year has stood out as one of the most consistent voices calling out for recognition of the child care crisis. So I'm particularly privileged to welcome Assemblymember Solages to our PowHer New York annual event and engage in what I know is going to be an insightful discussion about the 2021 legislative year. So welcome, Assemblymember Solages.
Thank you, Blue, and thank you for everyone at PowHer New York. It's just a great opportunity to be with you all this evening. It's very exciting. So happy holidays, everyone, and let's have a great conversation.
Great. Well, I do want to, unfortunately, I think we need to start in the moment, which is a little bit more sobering than exciting. And that is in this year that we all have to acknowledge has been like no other as we strive along with the entire world to navigate life in a devastating COVID pandemic. You're the mother of two young boys, you have a close extended family, you represent a district on Long Island with many low-income and immigrant communities as well as middle-class neighborhoods. You're a champion for Black and Brown families. I want to ask you to share, to the extent you're comfortable, what you've experienced and what you've learned from others about the impact of this pandemic on women and our communities.
So before I begin, I really just want to say to all the women on the line, we see you, we represent you. Please hold your head up high. Just because we're in the middle of a global pandemic doesn't mean that you can forget about yourself, or it doesn't mean that we can't continue fighting for anti-racist gender equality in this country, in this state, in our communities. So please hold your head up high. We will get through this. The past couple of months have been so difficult. And just speaking on a global level, I've seen people, as Attorney General said before, many constituents pass away. I've seen people struggle, but especially for women, I see that that this is on their backs. I heard it said that if men are going through a depression, if men are going through a recession, women are going through a depression. We're struggling the most when it comes to this global pandemic. And if you look at every sector, every income level, every race, you know that women are struggling the most. They have the burden of this pandemic. They're dealing with the food insecurity. About 70% of the women in America are still doing the household chores. On top of that, 80% of the women are doing remote learning with their children in addition to working. So, I don't think we have time for all the antidotes and the stories, but the story is still the same. Women are struggling, and we need to ensure that they're leading, this conversation is leading in the front end.
I think that last part, definitely leading in the conversation. I know in childcare and many other places, simply the need to have women present in decision-making circles, in the discussion and planning circles is so critical. And we still have a long way to go that way. Yes, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
So based on what you've heard from your constituents and what you've observed yourself, are there particular priorities that you really feel you're going to carry into this upcoming session?
What we said before, all the issues that were teaming before, whether it's the systematic systematic disenfranchisement of women, whether it's the systematic taking money out of childcare, whether it's the housing issues that are coming to the forefront. There's so many issues that affect women that are going to be at the forefront of the next budget negotiations. It's something that we have to talk about. The list goes on. And so, we have to be very smart and strategic of how we move forward, because the issues that we have to speak about have to come to the forefront. The issues of the list go on, the health disparities that we see with COVID-19, that Black and Brown communities are suffering more, whether the vaccine is going to be distributed to our communities in an equitable way. Another issue. There's so many issues. It's unbelievable. And I know I see all of you on the screen, and I know that you're thinking of an issue. That is an important issue that we have to champion. We can't forget about any of those issues.
All right, I wanted to talk particularly because the first thing that's going to happen in the legislature is discussion around the budget. Now, there may be some immediate pieces of legislation to get passed, but the first couple of months are always devoted to the budget. And we have a past experience that when we have budget deficits or shortfalls, that the state has generally decided to make across the board cuts. So let's just take a certain percentage off of every program and every budget line. And I think, while some people think that's easy and fair, it often ends up hurting those programs that have always suffered the most. And certainly there is another large group of people among, I think, most of the people here who feel that we need to put money where it is needed most and into the communities that need it most. So how can we as a group best promote a different kind of approach to the budget shortfall that we all know is present, and make sure that we prioritize a more caring economy, a more women and family-centered economy?
I think at this time, after being months in a global pandemic, we don't have the opportunity to cut programs. We don't have the opportunity to do across the board cuts. Already, many programs are struggling. Many coalitions see the disparities are happening. And so, my humble opinion is that, the cuts are not going to work this time. The cuts are going to be eliminations at this point. And we're talking about eliminating programs that help individuals with HIV survive, another day. We're talking about childcare slots that already are at ultimate low here in New York State. So, at this point, I don't believe in that. And I believe in ways of raising revenue and making sure that we have a fair economy where the people who can pay more, who can, provide more, can give more to the New York coffers. But, we do have a roadmap here, and we do have a coalition here. So it's important that we organize our thoughts, we organize how we talk to legislators and move forward. But the only way that we can do that is to have a plan. And I think we have that plan. And we need to fulfill that plan. So it's just vitally important that we do so. But in my humble opinion, we shouldn't be putting in our mind across the board cuts. We have to fight to ensure that we're spending every dollar correctly, that programs, are not being funded that are non-essential, and really, just fight for what's important to us.
We are, I think, I'm still not quite sure, but I think we're now with an assembly that has 50% women represented. So that's a new and exciting stage, and women stepping forward, running for office, becoming elected. And what I'm wondering is, are you seeing women coming together in the legislature behind a women's agenda? I know there's been a bipartisan legislative caucus for a while, but I don't know how well that's coalescing behind some of the issues we've been talking about.
I think it's great. Let's give a clap to that. we're at a very high margin. I think the highest that's ever seen in New York State, and we see that happening on every layer of government. We know that when women are elected, we do the job better. We're consensus builders. We care about the community. We could put our ego aside and get things done. So I think everyone's starting to realize that. So it's nice to see so many women in government. I feel that it's important that we can now put forth an agenda that envisions a world where, regardless of your gender expression, or sexual orientation, you have the opportunity to be important in New York State. And so it's great. We now are on most of the committees. We're going to have more chairmanships throughout the process and have a say. And it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to talk about the issues that are important to not only women, not only families, but to all New Yorkers.
And how about the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Asian caucus?
Yeah.
I think it's not always a place where PowHer and some of the other groups have been really present. What are the opportunities there?
I think it's a great opportunity. I'm actually the first chair ever elected outside of New York City. I'm one of the first women. I think there was only a couple of women before me. And so it's exciting to be able to, bring that life into the conversation. And I know that for myself, I want the caucus to start pushing forth policies and really talking globally, talking statewide about what we can do to fulfill our agenda. And so definitely I look forward to bringing more coalitions in. Even now at this time, we're creating our budget book, the People's Budget, which talks about our priorities in the next budget year. And we're always looking for insight and information. So, to all the coalition members, please reach out to us. My email is solages@nyassembly.gov. And you can just email me your priorities. And, I can't guarantee all of them are going to be there. As we said, we don't have much money here in New York State. But, we can fight for what's right. And the only way that we know is if you tell us this is a priority amongst the people. So it's very exciting to be able to lead the caucus. And already, we've had fruitful conversations, and we have a camaraderie that I've never seen before. So it's very exciting.
Terrific. That's great to hear. I want to give some of the people who are participating a chance to ask some questions. And I'm seeing a few in the chat. Rye, do you have a particular question that you're seen as a
Yeah, so
top
I'll
list?
ask one first that is mostly about essential workers and particularly about reporting unsafe working conditions due to COVID. Miriam Clark is wondering about where in the Assembly, what you think the possibility is of pushing legislation through in the next year about that would support workers, mostly women, who are essential and are working in unsafe working conditions but are fired because they've reported it.
Yeah, and not only unsafe working conditions, we also need to talk about flexible working time, where women are not able to work because they have to do remote learning or they have to care for a loved one, and they're fired because they can't accommodate the boss's schedule. So, I think that legislation is something that the Assembly, we care about. We already passed legislation to support our nurses and ensure that they are working in safe conditions. And I believe that we can extend that out to all individuals. So I look forward to, seeking legislation and seeing what we can do to move that forward. But I think that's something I see on a federal level. That's the conversation that's happening. And so on a statewide level, I think we could push an initiative. We're doing pandemic legislation, so I know that in time, sooner than later, that will come up.
Great. We have a question of whether you would comment on movement to pass the New York State ERA, Equal Rights Amendment.
Oh, what's taking so long? I don't get it. But I 100% support that. That's something that we'll get it done. But I think it's mind-boggling that this is not already done on a federal level. And I hope that the federal administration, gets on it. But if anything, New York State, come on, we're supposed to be the most progressive state in the country, and like we're stalling on stuff like this. But I think with 50% women in the legislature, I think we're gonna get something like that done.
Okay, great. We've had a question about distribution of vaccines. I don't know if you feel like you have the information about that. There's been some discussion back forth, who will get it at what levels. I know there's been some information online.
Yeah, I just want to ensure that healthcare workers, the most vulnerable, essential workers, people who want to take the vaccine, has that available to them. We don't have enough doses anyway, so it's a premature conversation to have. But in general, if you need the vaccine, you should be able to get the vaccine, and that's what I'm worrying about right now. I have a lot of healthcare workers who live within the 22nd Assembly District and throughout New York. And, a lot of vulnerable individuals, people with disabilities, senior citizens who deserve to have that protection. So, I hope that we're able to distribute it in an equitable way, especially for Black and Brown communities, for them to have access to it, because they've been most affected by COVID-19. So there's a lot of conversation right now. It's premature to talk about, certain things, but at the end of the day, anyone who wants it should be able to get it, and hopefully we can get that done.
And do you think that we're going to be able to have a full, robust session? How do you think COVID and virtual things are going to impact the way in which the legislature functions, the way in which people are able to communicate with legislators, et cetera?
I'm going to miss all you guys. I love seeing you up in Albany all the time, lobbying. That will be missed, but we have a mission. We have to fight. We have to advocate. The hush mouth doesn't get fed. So whether we're virtual or in person, we still have to have the drive and tenacity to ensure that our topics and policy and our agenda is put forward. So we shouldn't be apprehensive about virtual world. It's the new world that we live in. But we have to be loud. We have to be organized, and we have to push forth our agenda. So, whatever way we do that, whether it's, through Zoom or social media, we have to get it done. And I'm sure that we'll get it done. We have a lot at risk. There's a lot that we have to push forward.
Have you heard that there will be any change to the schedule, or is that not?
Well, the schedule just came out, and we see it. So it's 60 days of fun. But did we know that we're going to be in the middle of global pandemic and have perpetual session for 1 year straight? No. So I'm not going to commit myself to anything now.
I think that's smart.
Yeah. But I see a lot of my colleagues, Sandy Galef online, and Arabella Samotis, and Ellen Jaffe. I stand on their shoulders, and they know better than me, but they've always taught me, don't commit to the schedule. It might change.
Okay. somebody had asked and said, you know, women are going to need to be employed and need better jobs. What's the possibility, or are there proposals that women of color make up a good percentage, 50% or more of the trainees in job training programs?
So we really need to start thinking about a Marshall Plan or a New Deal for women, because we're disproportionately, excuse me, I can't talk tonight. I'm running around all day. Disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and so we really need to think about how we can ensure that women have access to job retraining, or the government contracts that go out, and ensure that, you know, more than 30% of the women have access to those contracts. There really needs to be a change of how we think, to ensure that the people who are disproportionately affected can gain access to what can happen. So I agree with you. You know, I know Pat Fahey, my colleague in the Assembly, has a great plan to employ, you know, New Yorkers, and we need to start being creative like that. So, you know, whether it's also creating a loan fund for women who create businesses, so that we support them, or ensuring that, you know, we help small business owners who, you know, some of them hire, a lot of them hire women, making sure that small business owners have access to a rental fund, or some type of money so that they can continue their business. There's so many ideas, but we have to implore all of them. We have to be creative, and we have to ensure that women are at the forefront of our conversation, and that we have an anti-racist agenda.
Thank you so much. There are other questions, but I'm afraid we have other things on the agenda. But as usual, it's always an amazing pleasure to talk to you. We love your energy. We love your passion. I love the idea of a New Deal on women. Maybe we can reflect elements in the roadmap, and we hope you'll sign on to the roadmap and include your colleagues and tell them to do so too. All right. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays. Take care.